Look around you. Every person in this room has at some point sacrificed their own needs to please someone who didn't deserve it. You've stayed late at work for a boss who doesn't value you. You've loaned money to friends who never pay back. You've listened to hours of someone's problems while yours went unaddressed. And society called this being kind. I'm here today to deliver a message that might feel uncomfortable at first, but could liberate you forever. Stop being kind to everyone. That's right. The universal kindness we've been taught to value is often the very chain that binds us to mediocrity, exhaustion, and resentment. True strength isn't found in endless giving. It's found in knowing exactly when to give, when to withhold, and when to walk away. The ancient Stoics understood this perfectly. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about being universally agreeable. He wrote about living according to nature and reason. And reason tells us that indiscriminate kindness is neither sustainable nor wise. Today, we're going to explore why selective kindness isn't just acceptable. It's essential for a life of purpose, respect, and authentic connection. By the end of our time together, you'll understand why the most respected, successful, and paradoxically, the most deeply appreciated people are those who know exactly when to say no. This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming conscious. Let's begin. Your capacity for kindness is not infinite. It's a precious resource that must be managed wisely. Every time you extend yourself for others, you're spending energy, time, and emotional capital. The question isn't whether you should spend these resources, but whether your investments are yielding proper returns. Consider the wisdom of Seneca, who wrote, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who hankers after more." When we dispense kindness indiscriminately, we create poverty within ourselves, not just of energy, but of dignity and self-respect. I've coached countless individuals who couldn't understand why they felt so depleted, so taken advantage of. The pattern was always the same. They had become emotional ATMs for everyone around them. Colleagues, family members, even strangers felt entitled to their time, attention, and resources. Why? Because these individuals had never established the price of their kindness. The most powerful people in any room are those who have mastered selective generosity. They give magnificently, but only where it matters. Only where it's deserved. Only where it creates value rather than dependency. This selective approach isn't selfishness, it's self-governance. It's recognizing that your kindness has tremendous value, and therefore shouldn't be dispensed without discernment. The moment you begin to be selective about where your kindness flows, you'll notice something remarkable. The right people will value it more, and the wrong people will gradually disappear from your life. Epictetus taught that true freedom comes from distinguishing between what we can control and what we cannot. You cannot control how others receive your kindness, but you can absolutely control to whom you offer it. This distinction alone can transform your personal power overnight. When you stop being kind to everyone, you reclaim the energy to be extraordinarily kind to those who matter. You preserve your personal power not by hoarding it, but by investing it where it will grow rather than diminish. This isn't just practical wisdom. It's the foundation of a life where your generosity becomes a strength rather than a vulnerability. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you commit a small act of self-betrayal. These betrayals compound over time, creating a gap between who you are and who you present to the world. This gap is the breeding ground for anxiety, depression, and profound exhaustion. The philosophy of boundaries isn't modern psychology, it dates back to ancient wisdom. Zeno of Citium, founder of Stoicism, taught that virtue consists in living in accordance with nature. Your nature includes limitations of time, energy, and capacity for involvement in others' problems. To deny these limitations isn't virtuous, it's delusional. What happens when you stop setting boundaries in the name of kindness? Your mind becomes a hotel where everyone's problems can check in but never check out. You become the custodian of others' emotional baggage while your own needs remain unaddressed. This isn't sustainable, and it certainly isn't kind, least of all to yourself. Consider this: 78% of adults report significant stress from their inability to say no in personal and professional relationships. This stress manifests physically, in compromised immune function, sleep disturbance, and even cardiovascular issues. Your boundaryless kindness isn't just hurting your mind, it's hurting your body. I worked with a woman named Sarah who came to me with chronic migraines and exhaustion. She was the person everyone called in a crisis: family, friends, colleagues. She never said no. When we examined her life, we discovered she hadn't had a weekend to herself in over a year. Every moment was consumed by someone else's emergency. Her kindness had become a prison sentence. Within 3 months of implementing strategic boundaries, saying no to demands that weren't emergencies and weren't coming from her inner circle, her migraines all but disappeared. Her energy returned. Most surprisingly to her, the quality of her relationships improved. The people who truly loved her respected her limits. Those who disappeared weren't allies to begin with. Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." You cannot control others' reactions to your boundaries, but you can control whether you set them. And this control is the foundation of mental health. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. And without self-preservation, you have nothing sustainable to offer anyone else. When you stop being universally kind and start being selectively boundaried, you don't diminish your light, you protect the source of your flame. There's a profound difference between being liked and being respected. Being liked often comes from pleasing others, saying what they want to hear, doing what they want you to do. Being respected comes from authenticity, standing in your truth even when it's uncomfortable. People-pleasing creates the illusion of connection. You gather around you individuals who appreciate what you do for them rather than who you are. This isn't friendship, it's a transaction masquerading as relationship. And like all inauthentic things, it cannot withstand the test of time or adversity. Aristotle distinguished between 3 types of friendship: those based on utility, those based on pleasure, and those based on virtue. Only the last category, friendships between people who appreciate each other's essential character, brings lasting fulfillment. When you stop being kind to everyone, you create space for these virtue-based connections to emerge. I've witnessed countless individuals transform their social circles after abandoning universal people-pleasing. Initially, there's often a painful contraction as fair-weather friends fall away. But what follows is remarkable: deeper connections, more honest communication, and relationships built on mutual respect rather than utility. Consider the case of Michael, a business executive who built his career on never saying no. He was liked by everyone but respected by few. His breaking point came when he realized his teenage children were emulating his people-pleasing behavior, compromising their own boundaries to gain approval. Watching them, he saw the future cost of his kindness. When Michael began expressing his authentic thoughts and setting clear boundaries, some colleagues reacted with surprise or even hostility. But others, often the most valuable team members, responded with increased respect. Within a year, he had fewer but far deeper professional relationships. His team became more efficient because they received clear, honest feedback rather than sugar-coated approval. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." This wisdom applies perfectly to authentic relationships. When you stop trying to be liked by everyone, you create space to be deeply loved by a worthy few. True connection isn't found in being universally agreeable. It's found in being authentically yourself and attracting those who appreciate that truth. When you stop being kind to everyone, you create the necessary conditions for genuine intimacy. You replace the exhausting performance of people-pleasing with the freedom of authentic self-expression. Universal kindness spreads your resources thin, creating ripples rather than waves. Strategic kindness, focused, intentional, and discriminating, concentrates your resources where they can create true transformation. Consider the difference between sprinkling water across an entire garden versus deeply watering a few crucial plants. The first approach seems fair, but ultimately nourishes nothing properly. The second appears selective, but produces actual fruit. This is the distinction between being kind to everyone and being strategically generous. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, despite his emphasis on virtue, understood the importance of wise resource allocation. He wrote, "We must not give benefits beyond our means." He recognized that generosity must be sustainable to be virtuous, and sustainability requires selectivity. I've worked with philanthropists who made the critical shift from scattered giving to focused impact. One client, a successful entrepreneur, initially donated to dozens of causes in small amounts. When we analyzed her giving, she realized she wasn't moving the needle on any single issue. By narrowing her focus to women's education in specific regions, her same financial contribution began producing measurable, substantive change. This principle applies not just to money but to all forms of generosity: your time, attention, emotional support, and practical help. When dispersed universally, these resources create minimal impact. When channeled strategically, they can transform lives. Research in effective altruism confirms this approach. Studies show that the most effective charitable interventions can be hundreds or even thousands of times more impactful than average ones. This extreme difference in outcomes isn't just about what you support, but how selectively and intensively you support it. The paradox of strategic kindness is that by helping fewer entities more meaningfully, you ultimately help more people. Your focused resources create solutions and systems that benefit many, rather than temporary relief that benefits few. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." This urgency should compel us not just to be good, but to be effectively good, to ensure our limited time and resources create the maximum possible benefit. When you stop being kind to everyone, you create the necessary space to be transformative for someone. This isn't diminishing your impact, it's amplifying it through strategic focus. It's replacing the shallow satisfaction of universal niceness with the profound fulfillment of meaningful change. Every time you say yes to something that violates your values, diminishes your well-being, or exploits your generosity, you communicate something profound, not just to others, but to yourself. You declare that your boundaries are negotiable, your time is dispensable, and your needs are secondary. This silent message, repeated over time, erodes the foundation of self-respect. The ability to say no is not just a practical skill, it's a philosophical stance. It's the assertion that you are the primary custodian of your life's resources, and you take this responsibility seriously. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This simple directive contains profound wisdom about the relationship between action and integrity. I've witnessed the transformation in clients who finally embrace the power of no. There was James, a consultant whose clients regularly demanded work beyond contracted agreements, just small favors that consumed his evenings and weekends. He fulfilled these requests out of kindness, fearing he would damage relationships by refusing. When James finally established clear boundaries, explaining warmly but firmly what was within scope and what required additional contracts, something unexpected happened. Rather than losing clients, he gained respect. His most valuable clients stayed and adapted to his boundaries. Those who left were invariably the ones who had been exploiting his kindness all along. This pattern repeats across contexts: professional, personal, and romantic. The people who react with hostility to your reasonable boundaries are precisely the people you need to establish boundaries with most urgently. Their negative reaction isn't evidence you should return to people-pleasing. It's confirmation that your boundary was necessary. Research in psychology supports this approach. Studies show that people who set clear boundaries are perceived as more competent and, counterintuitively, more likable in the long run than chronic people-pleasers. We may temporarily resent those who say no to us, but we ultimately respect them more than those whose yes feels empty or resentful. Consider the wisdom of Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When someone makes an unreasonable demand, you cannot control their request, but you control your response. And in that response lies your power to maintain or surrender your self-respect. When you stop being kind to everyone, when you become selective about where you extend yourself, you make a powerful declaration. Your life has value. Your time has value. Your energy has value. And this value will not be squandered on the undeserving or exploitative. This isn't selfishness, it's self-governance of the highest order. It's recognition that you cannot serve from an empty vessel, and that maintaining your vessel is not just a right but a responsibility. When you say no to what diminishes you, you preserve your capacity to say yes to what truly matters. We began this journey by challenging one of society's most cherished myths, that universal kindness is a virtue. We've discovered instead that selective kindness, directed with intention, protected by boundaries, and grounded in self-respect, is not just more sustainable but ultimately more impactful. The path we've explored isn't about becoming hardened or callous. It's about becoming conscious, making deliberate choices about where your precious resources of time, energy, and goodwill should flow. It's about recognizing that when you try to be kind to everyone, you often end up being truly kind to no one, least of all yourself. The philosophers and sages across cultures and times understood what our modern kindness culture has forgotten, that virtue without discernment becomes vice. The Stoics taught that wisdom lies not in avoiding judgment but in judging wisely, not in abandoning standards but in upholding them with clarity and courage. As you leave here today, I challenge you to examine where in your life you've been kind out of fear rather than choice. Where have you said yes when your soul was screaming no? What relationships have you maintained out of obligation rather than genuine connection? What demands have you met at the expense of your own well-being? These questions aren't comfortable, but transformation rarely emerges from comfort. It emerges from the courageous questioning of assumptions we've long taken for granted. The journey toward selective kindness will not be without challenges. People who have grown accustomed to your boundaryless giving may resist your transformation. Some relationships may not survive your newfound self-respect. But what awaits on the other side is worth these growing pains. A life where your generosity becomes a strength rather than a vulnerability, where your relationships are built on mutual respect rather than exploitation, and where your impact becomes profound rather than scattered. Remember, the most respected, successful, and paradoxically, most deeply appreciated people are those who know exactly when to say no. They understand that true kindness isn't found in universal agreeability but in authentic engagement with worthy individuals and causes. Stop being kind to everyone. Start being extraordinary to the few who deserve it, including yourself. This isn't a retreat from virtue. It's the advancement toward a more sustainable, impactful, and ultimately more genuinely compassionate way of being in the world. I want to express my deepest gratitude for your presence and attention today. By engaging with these challenging ideas, you've demonstrated a commitment to authentic growth that sets you apart. The path of selective kindness isn't the easiest route. It requires courage, discernment, and sometimes difficult conversations. But I believe it leads to a life of greater integrity, impact, and genuine connection. If these ideas have resonated with you, I invite you to take one small step this week. Say one respectful no where you would normally say an uncomfortable yes. Notice how it feels, what it creates space for, and how others respond. This single action can be the beginning of a profound transformation. Thank you for your time, your openness, and most importantly, for having the courage to challenge conventional wisdom in pursuit of a more authentic life. I'm honored to be part of your journey.